I'm your host, Dino Watt, and get ready to be inspired as you learn exactly how to own your role. And welcome once again, everybody, to the Own Your Role podcast. Excited to have you here for another episode where we get to dive into the stories and the information around unique entrepreneurs that are out there. And before we get started with today's episode, again, want to thank you all for supporting the show and sharing it with your friends and colleagues. We're super excited with both iterations of the show. We are now up to, I think, almost 200 episodes, and that's quite a feat. And it's only because you guys keep asking for great stuff and meeting me at conferences and events to tell me how much you enjoy the information we put out there, especially with the news side with Own Your Role and being able to talk to all these different entrepreneurs from unique and interesting backgrounds and what they're trying to do to change their part of the world or the world at large. So thank you again for being a part of our audience. Don't forget to like and subscribe and to make sure that get that notification button so you know when we release a new episode, which pretty much is every week. So excited. Thank you again for being here. That being said, our guest today is going to talk to us about something that I truly believe in. Any of you that have listened to the show for any long period of time have ever had me speak at one of your events, you know that I care deeply about this idea of leadership and what that really is and how to maybe rethink what we think about leadership. And Jonathan Bennett is our guest today, who is a leadership coach. He has an amazing background in the medical field as an executive and has gone through a lot of really great things in his life that we're going to get to dive into and be honored to know just a little bit about his journey and what he does. So thanks for being here again, everybody. Let's get started with the show. Jonathan, welcome to Own Your Role podcast.
Hi, Dino. It's great to be here.
Well, I think people will notice right away that you are definitely from some southern state in the United States, I can tell. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And one of the things we always do in this show is talk about our stories because stories connect everybody. We'd love to hear your background and your story of how you got here with whatever you'd like to tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So my fading accent is Australian. I grew up in Sydney, Australia. I now live in Ontario, Canada. A bit about my background. So I have an English literature degree, and all I wanted to do was write novels and books of poetry. But here's the thing I found out: poetry doesn't pay, kids.
Not probably much. I'm not thinking.
So while I was very fortunate, really privileged. I had a wonderful literary career. I've published 7 books and did some really wonderful things. But along the way, I had to make a living. And for me, that meant corporate communications, which then spun out into government relations and marketing, and then into general management. I've also just sort of gradually become kind of a governance nerd as well. And I sit on a couple boards. So I found myself on the senior team of a big, huge hospital here in Canada. And I had one of those existential moments where I'd been in the job for 7 years and we built a new hospital and I kind of made it through 2 CEOs. And I just wondered, why am I doing this? Like, who am I? And did I ever choose this? And so I kind of thought deeply and decided that the work of the hospital was not matching where I was at in my life at the time. I had 2 young kids at the time, and one of them, my eldest, is autistic and really needed a lot more from me than being an executive at a hospital was allowing me to have. And so I quit and I started a management consulting company. And that was my journey for the next 10 years, was growing and scaling this company. And about 2.5 years ago, I was able to sell that and exit. And these days, I'm an executive coach.
Wow, I love that. It's so much experience. And I love that you recognized what was most important to you, focusing on that, kids, your own life, what you want to do with that. And I think too many people get stuck in that space of doing what they have to do because this is where they ended up, right? And like you even said, you kind of turned around at one point and was like, well, I didn't make this. Did I make this choice to be here to do this thing? Let's figure it out. I'm very curious though, because it's hard to make that decision and if you don't have the right support system around you. So what support system did you have around you when you decided, you know what, I'm going to well, actually two times in your life. First, when you left the executive job, and then now just recently when you decided to sell your company. What support systems did you have around yourself?
Yeah, I'm super lucky, really, really lucky. I mean, I have a wonderfully supportive spouse, and I'll tell you about when I left the hospital first, because it really was a kind of existential sort of crisis. Like, who am I, and am I supposed to be doing this, and what am I supposed to be doing, and what is my purpose? Like, it felt like that. And I was very unsure. And the one thing I did know is that this work life, I was in no kind of balance. And, I would get to the hospital. If any of your listeners work in acute care, they know what this is like. You show up for 6:30 so you can meet doctors before rounds. And I staffed one of the subcommittees for the board of directors. And so I would be like leaving at 11 o'clock at night after the last of the board members would shuffle out, after the grueling board meeting. And so I was just so out of alignment with having any kind of balance. So I have a very good friend of mine who had a management consulting company in Vancouver, and which is on the other side of the country, obviously from where I'm at. I'm in Ontario. And I was kind of telling her where I was at in my life. And she said, it sounds like you need a really good part-time job to give yourself some time to do something else while you figure out what it is and who you want to be. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds pretty great. She said, good, can I hire you? So I was very fortunate that she gave me kind of 6 months of employment. And it did two things. One, it gave me some runway. And two, it allowed me to see the inside of a management consulting company. Hers was a beautiful, beautiful company. It's called Bellrock, still in existence. And she's still one of the leaders of it to this day. But she taught me a lot about how to sell work, how to structure your offers, just how to hustle. And it was such a gift. And so when it came time for me to focus in on the things that I knew that I wanted to turn my attention to, I was able to take all of that learning and plant a flag in the ground and launch my own company.
My only concern with that is she said a part-time job, and for you, that time, part-time was a normal time for most people. So
And kind of that's what it turned into. You saw right through it. Yeah, she was, of course, way smarter than me, and she's like, "Oh, I'll hire him part-time, and he'll probably work full-time." And I kind of did, but it was just great. I'm like eternally grateful for her.
I'm really interested in your perspective of that shift from realizing what you don't want to finding something new that was really kind of fell in your lap in a way, right? A lot of people take years to find that thing that clicks with them, and you were able to kind of land into that space, luckily with some good support. What did that feel like when you were clicked in, when you're like, oh, this is it, not that, this?
I think I knew I was onto the right thing after I spent some time with her, and I thought I know what I want to do, and I know the niche. So the company that I founded, we became a B Corp, and we served nonprofit and public sector organizations across the country. And so it was a very like purpose-driven, socially conscious company, and it really matched my values and the kind of work I wanted to do. But I also saw a real need out there at the time. It's less true now, but at the time, the nonprofit sector, at least in this country, was really poorly served by management consultants. It was something that the for-profit management consultants did kind of out of a spirit of generosity off the side of their desk. But the sector is actually really quite particular, and they have some really focused needs. And I knew a lot about that because of my history. And so it was really a coming together of many things, and it felt great. Like, it really felt like I had found the thing that I was really meant to be doing at that time in my life. And it was easy to draw people to me. Hiring people when you're, a startup consulting firm is a big deal. You're asking people to ramp their boat to yours and to trust you that you can feed them and pay them, and also that you'll be able to convincingly continue to sell work over time. So I was really like, all of that positive energy helped me to achieve those things and to begin to grow the company.
It's amazing when you get that call it the jackpot, right? When all those, I don't do slots, but I understand slots, right? When you get all
Yeah.
those little lemons to line up, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the thing. And there are a couple of things I think sometimes that you can go, oh, I'm good at this, and that fits in. But when you get that jackpot, that's it. Well, then you get it, and you build your business. You spend 10 years building that business, and then again, you go into that place of, well, maybe it's time to do something else, or maybe it's time to let this go. What was that like?
Really hard.
Mm.
Really hard. I learned a ton about myself and about succession planning and the importance of it. I think because I'd been a consultant, I'd watched a lot of leaders hang on way too long and start to damage their own personal brands, their own reputations, in fact, their own organizations, because they waited for too long and saw good people leave that really should have been the next person. So I think I was probably more acutely aware of it because I'd been helping other people with it. I remember the exact moment that I figured it out. I was on a vacation in Dublin, Ireland with my wife, and we were walking through the streets and we were having a kind of philosophical walk and talk. And I sort of said, I think I might be coming close to the end. I don't know. And she said, well, you probably need a plan because you can't just give 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I know what the plan is. I'd never said it aloud, but like I knew the person at the company who I thought was going to be the next CEO and the next likely owner. But of course, I'd never said anything to her yet. It was all happening inside my head. And so I got back and I began really gently a conversation that evolved over time with my former colleague and now the owner of the company around creating a succession plan. And we took, a good amount of time. It happened during COVID. So that sort of extended out the period. But I learned a lot. It's an emotional journey. I mean, we hammered out the deal easy enough. We like each other. We trust each other. She already knew the business. It was a management buyout. So we structured the deal. That's fine. But this was my baby, this thing that I grew, and these people and their relationships with me. So that was really a big learning experience. And, I suppose a kind of grief that you go through around letting it go. And it's an emotional journey for anybody that's been through it. You'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I can even feel that energy from you now because you have this attachment to something. There's so many kind of webs attached to you, whether it be clients and their stories, and you know about their stories, you don't want to leave them hanging, the team members that you've developed and you've cultivated, the business itself, what you had as the dream and the hope of what it would become someday, and whether it's there or not, or if you're okay letting go of that, future that's never going to be in existence. And so it is a lot. And so a lot of the listeners of this show are in the medical practice space. And I'll say there are times where right now, especially, there's a lot of people looking at what do I do for the future? How do I prep myself for that exit or that buying of my company or partnering with another brand or a larger corporation type situation? As somebody who's gone through it before, what would you say are some of the biggest kind of things they should really be focused on, thinking about, thinking through before they say yes to it? Because when you're doing well, and there are people who are doing well, it's not like everybody's in a desperate situation needs to sell, but they recognize maybe my next step is still out there. What are some specific things you would have them think about?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm a big believer in get off the stage while the crowd's still clapping.
Mm.
Don't wait for everybody to finish clapping and leave the theater, right? So that means that when things are good is precisely when you're most likely a target for somebody to reach out to try to buy you. When you're most attractive, if you crest and you start to head downhill, then you're not negotiating with the world from a position of strength.
Sure.
So as things are going well and as you're still growing and building, you really should be thinking about succession. It doesn't mean that you'll do it, but you should have a plan. So that includes what internal folks are around you and maybe might they be the right next leaders? What might you be wanting to do yourself after? It's not enough to take a payout and you think, whoa, I'm done. But you just left your identity in the rearview mirror. And so who are you now? And so you should be thinking about all of those sorts of things as well. So in my coaching practice, I spend a lot of time with founders and leaders talking about these very things.
Yeah.
What might their runway be? Who around them might be the people that could step up and buy? Like increasingly, there's more and more creative ways to sell a company. To the employees is happening more and more and more now. And management buyouts are happening more and more, especially in service-based businesses. And there's a huge wave of a generation that's finally selling. So there's a lot more churn. Yeah, a lot more churn in the market, especially in healthcare. We've got a real lack of primary care in this country. I don't know what it's like for you guys, but it's really hard for docs, especially to transition out here, and so they're going through a lot of difficulty as they transition their practices. That's for sure. So there's some of the things that really come up for me.
Well, I think it's really wise. And I love that you use the word secession, because a lot of people don't really think of it that way. They think of either selling out or buyouts or whatever, but secession allows at least in a emotional state, to know that it's going to go on beyond you, that it's not the end of something, it's an actual evolution of something. I think it's really, really powerful to be in that space and thinking that way. Now with your coaching and do you specifically coach now with executives who are thinking about that succession plan, or just coaches in general, how to be better leaders and helping them connect more?
Yeah, I have a pretty broad practice. So I'm kind of a generalist. I'm in lots of different sectors. I still have a lot of healthcare and not-for-profit clients, for sure, right across North America. And one of the things that all of them, if they're running a big organization, they're thinking about legacy, they're thinking about retirement maybe. But I also coach folks that are got startups happening or that are scaling, and they hit the magic 10 number of employees, and suddenly they need processes and systems and back office. And so I've done that journey, and so I spend a lot of time helping them build out that as well.
Well, let's pivot to that for a moment, because I know that there are people on here who are saying, I'm not ready to sell or have that succession plan, but I'm in this place of building. Maybe I'm not at the 10 yet, or maybe I'm past that, but I'm in this place of building, and I want to build a company that means something, build a company that actually connects with who I am and my values. And I think, maybe they're not thinking about that. And that's one of the things that I love to talk to you about, because for me, I think you attract the people based upon the magnets you put out there. And one of those magnets is your culture, is your core values, is the dent you want to make on the universe with your company. How do you approach or help people cultivate the things that are most important to them, so that they can, in my opinion, avoid burnout and things like that? I just believe that that's where a lot of burnout comes from, is when people are incongruent with their values and what they're doing in the world. So how do you help people cultivate that or create that maybe don't have that yet?
I think understanding your values and unlocking them and writing them down, it's really your ethical model, and it's how you show up in the world. And if you can articulate that to the people around you, then they know what it is that they're attaching to. And I love your magnet metaphor, because either they'll be repelled by it if they're the wrong attraction force, or they'll be instantly magnetically drawn to you. And so the clearer you can be around your values, what you stand for, what you won't do is just as important. What's in the no-go, lane for you as a business is really important. Marketers would call that a differentiator, but I think it also means when you're thinking about values, the kinds of things that you won't do, the kinds of businesses you won't do business with, the kind of markets you won't go into. And they could be for ethical reasons, but they could also just be because I say so.
Yeah.
Because it's my business. Yeah. These are,
yeah.
That's it. So I think that, the beautiful thing about really small companies and small startups is they're so agile, but they tend to be personality driven, and they tend to be exciting and freewheeling, and you can try things and move fast and break stuff. That's what the startup kind of world likes to say and do. But you get to sort of a magic number of 10 to 13 where that becomes not safe anymore. Actually, you can't be in every meeting anymore. You need to have professionalized management structures start to come into play. You need human resources, processes, and systems. You need performance metrics and key performance metrics and ways to communicate to everybody around you that you're being successful. And this is what good performance looks like. That's a hard moment because half the company's like, no, I like the way it used to be.
Right.
And so, there's lots of owners that walk back from that say, actually, you know what, we're just going to kind of stay at the 8 range, the 4 range, the 5 range, because that's the kind of company I want. But way too many in my practice find themselves at 20, 30, 40 people, and they still want that, what it used to be like. And there's still those early employees that are still with them, that pine for the good old days. But a whole new set of folks have joined that are looking for psychologically safe work environments. They're looking to do good work. They want to know what the rules are around here. They just want to take vacation, and they want to apply for it, and they want to know that they're getting paid in the right way, and they want to do their work well. And so, where's your SOPs? Like, what are the KPIs? What am I doing around here? And if you look at them blankly, then you are, a recipe for disaster, because you've built something that needs something different from you than what it was like when you first began.
It's interesting. I had a company literally call me today. They're at a ophthalmology company, and it's multiple practices. And I had no idea who they were. They found out about me through another person, and they had said, we're growing so fast. And we've been together, these 3 doctors been together for, I guess it was the last 10 years. But over the last 3 years, we've been growing faster. And I'm talking to the CEO, and the CEO said, yeah, I'm recognizing we're taking people from the business and moving them up into management, but they don't know how to be managers. And then the owners are in a position of saying, well, we don't have time to stop to teach them because we're making so much money and it's moving so fast. And I said, so are you prepared for the crash? Because there's no way this can sustain. There's no battleship that can be out there that doesn't have people who have processes, systems, programs, culture, values, that it won't eventually run into ground. You're going to do it. I don't care how happy things are. And it's interesting when you come up against somebody who is in that place of, whether it's a building momentum or actually they are finally hitting that stride and oh, wow, we actually didn't just break even this year. We're actually making a profit, and we're actually making more and more profit. Do you ever see people get in that momentum, kind of mesmerized by the momentum, so they forget about the things that got them there, or focus on the things that can help them get faster?
Well, yes. It happens all the time, because for most entrepreneurs, it's the first time they've ever done this.
Yeah.
So, they don't know it. I mean, they don't know what the symptoms. Like, you or I are lucky. We're looking from the outside in, and we're like, wow, you're about to smash into a wall.
Right.
Like, no one can sustain that kind of growth.
Yeah.
But for them, it's so exciting. This is their hopes and dreams coming true. And they just need to hire a new person and a new person and a new person, open up a new location, and, get some new funding and drive the new thing. And so they're all about it. Meanwhile, somebody like you or I come in, and we sit with the frontline staff, and we're like, hey, what's it like to work here?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you. And then the tears start. And so, you get to shuffle back to CEO and say, so you're falling apart at the seams. And that's because you've grown too quickly. You haven't built the processes and systems. People don't know how to be successful here. You haven't defined it. And all they want is boundaries. All they want is rules. And you're operating back when you had none, because it was so fun. And you just, we're all like a family around here. We just kind of get in and roll up our sleeves and just go it. But that can't work when you start to get bigger.
Isn't it fascinating? We have in today's world, we have so many examples of companies from the past and even the present that failed because of that. Be that hit that land and we're shocked by it. And yet still we're not looking at them as often as examples of, if you're a business owner, like, see what's going to happen here. And it is important to have people like you or I who can be on the outside of the door going, do you not notice that? Do you not see that? And I love that you said that about like, well, let me tell you, because I think that is like your first warning as a leader, when you have a team member who gets the opportunity to, whether it be through a survey or through a consultant, to speak their mind, and they start with, well, let me tell you. It's like there's everything they comes after, I think is gonna be golden if you listen to it. But if not, that's a problem. So it's very fascinating to me. What do you think are, if you had to choose, are there any reoccurring themes that you end up seeing with leaders in today's world right now, of what causes either the burnout or the frustration or the confusion, the lack of what to do next? What were the reoccurring themes that you see there?
Well, loneliness is one.
Wow,
I
that's a great one.
think that leaders are often really lonely. There is only so much that you can tell your staff without freaking everybody out. So you tend to not want to worry everybody. There's only so much you can tell your investors because you want them to trust you and to think that there's a big return coming.
Yeah.
You can only bring so much of it home to your spouse or to your friends before they just glaze over and think that you're telling more boring work stories. So what do you do with it? And P.S., you're like the owner, founder, CEO. So probably you've got all the answers, right? So you're it.
Sure.
And so you're deeply accountable, and you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing or that you don't know how to solve this particular problem. So you keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And you spiral, and it's a pretty lonely place. So one of the things that I do when I first start working with people is I just unburden them. And it's just like work therapy. I just listen and I just like get it all out, because that act of telling the story of how we got to where we're getting to helps me as I'm creating the narrative and building out a scenario of where we can go from here. Because it doesn't have to feel like you're alone. It doesn't have to feel like there are no answers, or that you're stuck, or that you don't know what to do, or, like the number of times, like, I have a client that's just thinks that they're just stuck with an employee, or there's no way around this particular problem. And, it's just Mr. Fresh Eyes here. Like, it's not like I'm a genius, but I get to stand there and just ask the hard questions and listen to the stories, and we can create a way out of this. There's always a way.
I love that. I'm writing down a note here because I wanted to ask you about that. I'm assuming most people that come to you are already in that loneliness stage, but do you have any examples of business owners who, again, I'm going to go back to what's available to us nowadays, the information that's there, whether it be in books or podcasts or Google it or YouTube it, right? There's no lack of information. Do you have any examples of any leaders or business owners who actually set that intention early to make sure they were vulnerable enough with their team members or their investors or themselves, that because they didn't want to get trapped in that loneliness cycle?
Yep, the younger ones. So I have some young leaders, CEOs, who are in their kind of early 30s, and they get the big job and they sign up with a coach. I'm like, what's on your mind? They're like, nothing. I've just started. I'm good. But I know I'm going to need this.
Yes.
And I want somebody to go on this journey with me. I'm like, okay. So, how do we spend our time? I talk about how to, tell me about how you delegate. How do you manage your time? Like, we do basic stuff. And there's always things we can tweak and learn. But sure enough, within the first couple months, something is going to come up. Oh my God, my board of directors wants me to do A, B, and C, or some big crisis happens. And I've got one person, I'll have to just be very careful the way I say this. I've got one client right now who just is 6 months into a job, 5 months into a job. Everything was going smoothly, and they hired me precisely for this reason. And they had a real crisis happen at their organization. And because I had been there with them just it was mostly like I'm trying this and I'm going to change this, but no, I don't want to change too much. And it was just the normal kind of first 90 days, first 3 months, 5 months kind of stuff. Then when the crisis hit, I already knew all the players, I knew the issues, and I was able to, pull back on my public relations experience and the other stuff that I know how to do to be able to help them navigate. And in fact, they were more than capable of navigating through this crisis, but to have somebody to just bounce the ideas off. And so, we tripled up the calls through that period of that month around just getting it, because there was lots of puts and takes and national media interest and all kinds of stuff that was very, very complex. And so I was already there. And so I think that kind of, the psychologists would call that scaffolding, to put that in place, is just very preventative and quite thoughtful. And I'm seeing more and more now, but mostly from the younger folks who have grown up with knowing that this is kind of normal, and it's normal to talk about your feelings and to do this kind of stuff ahead of time.
Well, I would guess that's why were promoted to that leadership position, because not only were they young, not only did they feel like this normal, but they also were aware enough to say, and have self-awareness enough to say, I'm not dealing with it now, but I'm sure it'll come, because I'm not, naive enough to realize in the next 30 years, nothing's going to happen, which is interesting because unfortunately, I think there is a part of a generation that said, just figure it out myself. Oh, we'll just deal with it when the crisis happens, then we'll deal with it. And I've always had this belief that I want to do as much as I can. Of course, I have no control over anything in life other than my own feelings and stuff, but I've never wanted to be in the position of going like, wow, didn't see that coming. I didn't expect that, to be able to say, oh, okay, this is a natural part of the progress. Even whether it be my stress or my frustration, cool, this is what it is. I need a place to express that. As a coach, though, I'm very curious to find out, what is your number one rule that you must have for yourself when it comes to working with your clients? Because I know myself, I've got knowledge, I've got understanding, I've got a different perspective because I'm on the outside of that jar. And one of the challenges I come up against myself sometimes, like, I need to pull back and not give them all the answers and not tell them exactly what I think they should do or whatever. But I also have some rules around non-negotiables, if you will, about who I will or won't put up with or deal with. Do you have any rules for yourself as a coach?
Oh, that's really interesting. I try to come and meet people where they're at. Not everybody is going to be for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I can just do my work in the best way that I know how to do it. And some people, it could just be that, I'm not exactly what they're looking for, or I don't have enough of similar lived experience to, be able to navigate that. So that does happen from time to time. I'm definitely always on the lookout to not work with people who are not curious about their own personal development. And so, an extreme example would be a narcissist, but there's certainly there's a lot of people for whom showing any kind of weakness in leadership has just been drummed into them. Sure. And their ability to be able to just sit with a problem is not very sophisticated. Yeah. I personally find that quite frustrating as a coach, and I don't like the way it makes me feel. And so I mostly am on the lookout for that when I'm at the very early stages of deciding whether or not I can, whether somebody's going to be the right fit for me. Is I'm looking for how attuned are they, and what is their language kind of, what's sitting underneath what they're really saying when it comes to their relationship with like personal development and growth and seeing the things like where are their blind spots as leaders. Like if they're not curious about that and they don't want to work on that, then I'm probably not the right person for them. And that might be like an easy thing to say, like maybe every coach would say that, but like I find it really really quite like really frustrating. And I don't want to sit on a coaching call and just listen to somebody tell me how great they are. I just find that totally boring.
Or they've already tried that, or, nothing works, or we've tried everything. And I think that's akin for me. I love that, because akin for me is the person who um, I can get the feeling or the sense that this is a checklist thing for them, right? They
Yeah.
went to a
Yeah.
seminar,
Yeah.
they heard
Yeah.
it's important to get a coach, so I'm going to get a coach to say I got a coach, so I can say I did that, and then I can go
Yeah.
back and complain about the things that I still want to complain about. That's that personal development side of it.
Yeah, yeah, there is a bit of that actually now. Like it used to be, it had quite a lot of the remedial associated with it when it came to coaching. I don't find that's really true anymore.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's become so ubiquitous that people think that they always need one, and or there's some companies that just sort of like have a bench of
Right.
coaches who come and serve everybody in middle management. And I think that those folks probably put up with a lot of what you're talking about. I'm very like privileged and lucky that that's not who I typically work with. It's going to be it's going to be for me. It's going to be those leaders that are just full of themselves that I just personally really want to work with.
So I remember one time I had a client, I learned this lesson years ago, and it was probably a little bit arrogance on myself too, of they had a problem. Here's how to fix it. Here's the map. Look, here it is. And every week we'd come back and it would still be the same problem. Like, have you done have you fixed, have you done the work? No, haven't, still have the problem. And I remember going out to my office with my wife and just saying like, man, I'm just so frustrated. They're just not doing like said they want this. And I'm giving them the map. I swear if they just did this, it'll be it. And she's like, you can't want their success more than they do. And I was like, oh man, that just hit me in the head. Do you have any of those moments in your career where you're like, man, I have to realize I can't want it more than they do or want it for them?
I think I recognize myself in that story, but like from a go. I think these days I'm developed a level of patience, and I'm ready to wait for people and meet them where they're at, and learning about where they're at and what they're ready for, and what I could, where their next boundary is that I could push them to,
Yeah.
is sort of that feels like my work. And for some of them, we're really at early stages of self-development. It's got nothing to do with their age, right?
Right.
Like I
Sure.
coach 30-year-olds and 60-year-olds, and like I can tell you, it's soup to nuts.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out like where are they at and what they're ready for, and what do they think they need, and is that actually what I think that they think they need? Usually I start with what they think they need. The thing that they come with, we'll work on that first, and then I'll build trust. And by the time we've gotten through that, I'll figure out actually what they really need, which they haven't figured out yet. But that's okay. That's why they're hiring me. So then I can do that work with them, and hopefully we get some real insights and some real breakthroughs. And that's where the deep work happens. That's the really exciting stuff. That's the personal work side of it. And because of the work that I do is very business oriented. Like I'm not a life coach, and I'm very boundaried around all of that stuff. It happens while we fix the business model, while we reorg the thing, or while we do the M&A. Like we're doing personal development stuff and business stuff simultaneously. So for those folks that are practical, they get that, and then they sort of it's kind of like the medicine that's in the honey, at
Yeah.
the same time that they're hopefully growing as they go about running their business. They're learning about themselves, how they're showing up in a room, how people experience them. They're the sorts of things that I'm helping them with.
I love that. I love that. Okay. We need to pivot to one more thing, which is, I think, and I don't know if it's the same thing in Canada as is down here, but the challenge of employees, of leadership, finding the right people, cultivating the right people, keeping the right people. And again, I use that magnet analogy because I truly believe when you create a magnetic culture, you attract the right people to work with and the right people to work for. And there seems to be a kind of a blanket challenge right now with finding the right people. How do you help leaders have more patience with waiting to find the right person instead of just putting a warm body in that space?
It'll never work. The one body will just never work. Where you're just playing a numbers game. And I mean, if you're willing to grind through a whole bunch of people until you find the right one, I mean, it's one way, I suppose. It's basically like the cold outreach version of hiring.
It's a hard way.
So it's that's really hard work. I mean, I think that what you should be looking for is the underlying conditions of your workplace are gonna be the retention and attraction magnets that you will really want. So an organization that's psychologically safe and one that has a deep sense of accountability, personal accountability, that each employee feels accountable for their work, team accountability, so I care about and I'm here for those folks that I work with, and organizational accountability. So I also believe that this company, I care about it and I know that it cares about me. So if those things are all in place, and then, I think that then your recruitment and your retention issues just naturally go down. Like I'll tell you a story. While I was at my previous company, I was traveling. I was in Ottawa, and I was waiting at a lunch meeting for whoever I was meeting to come. And so I'm on my phone, and I get this text, and one of my colleagues was just sort of like being a bit vague about something that was obviously happening back at the ranch, and I was trying to like get a sense of it, and eventually it came through. And what happened was that we had to switch out. Somebody's kid was sick and they were traveling a long way, and another person from a different project was subbed in, and they were getting briefed on the way, even though they'd never done this before, and it was all okay. And so I'm being told this after the fact, that this was just solved. And I'm telling this person that I'm having lunch with this, and they just looked at me dumbfounded. And they're like, why are you acting like this is normal? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, do you have any idea? Like, you have a self-organizing, self-correcting team. That is like the pinnacle of what you could achieve. So you should like remember this moment, because you may not experience it again. Yeah. And I think back on that a lot. It was really a group of people that had really rallied around and had created a kind of maturity in the team that, we would put out a job and we would have so many applicants, because it was a workplace culture that people wanted to come and join and be a part of. And our values were very obvious. And so it was like the magnet you were talking about earlier, Dino, like we would just wave it out there and the people would come. So I think your challenge is that, if you're the owner, you're the CEO, and you're trying to, fix a recruitment or fix a retention problem, that's just the transactional output part. Really, the upstream part is making your workplace culture the kind of place that will be self-fulfilling. That if I come and join that, I know I can come. It's psychologically safe because I can have an idea and not risk being laughed at or ridiculed. I can make a mistake and somebody will say, oh, that's not how we do it here. Let me help you out and, I'll train you, as opposed to shaming you. So if you've put those things in place, then these kind of more sort of like the problems that we all focus on, the recruitment problems, the retention problems, they tend to kind of correct.
That's so perfect. That's so true. I love that. Focusing on the foundation instead of the transaction. And that's exactly what I think so many people are so worried about, this transaction piece, but not, again, I think it goes back to the beginning of our conversation where people think, oh, I'll deal with that later. I'll focus on that later. It will be a thing. I'll get to that later, instead of, no, this is important now. It's such a, almost a cliche piece that we talk about so much around this idea of do the hard work now so the rest of it can be easy. But so many of us go into that easy spot and then find out it's so much harder later because we haven't done the hard work before. Man, this has been amazing. I can't believe our time is almost up. I want to make sure people know how to reach out to you, because Jonathan Bennett, you have given some really great nuggets here. And I know people are going to want to get to know more about you, find out more about you. Where can people reach out and find you?
So I'm really active on LinkedIn. So shoot me a DM. I spend usually an hour with everybody that wants a trial coaching session. So feel free to sign up and get to know me and my coaching and the kind of trusted advisory work that I do. And you can also find me online, clearlythen.com.
Clearlythen.com. Awesome. Love it. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes and everything else there too. So at the end of our show, we always end with 4 specific questions that we ask every guest based around your role. Are you willing to play?
I'm willing to play.
All right. There's rapid fire off the top of your head. Just give us whatever comes to your mind first. The first is all about responsibility. And the question we ask is, what do you feel is your own personal highest and greatest responsibility on the earth?
To be here for my family.
Mm. What do you want as the ultimate outcome for your life?
To be remembered for somebody that is giving in
Mm.
all ways.
Love it. It seems like that's on the nose for you. So that's awesome. What do you consider, and this is right up your alley, true leadership to be?
Knowing how to have the right conversation.
Mm. Lastly, is about your experience. We all have, unfortunately, we'll have one final day on this earth. Hopefully, that is years and years and years from now. But what experience do you hope to have or want to have between now and dead?
The number one thing on my bucket list, Dino, is to see a cricket match in India.
Wow.
I am a big cricket fan, which we didn't get into because cricket
No
doesn't come up
idea,
that
but
often
yeah.
in North America. Yeah. But I'm a big cricket fan. That goes back to my childhood, and I've always wanted to see a game in India. So I'd say that is the one thing I would love to make sure that I actually do. And I shouldn't put it off forever. Should get on that.
You know what? I don't know if you do any speaking or anything, but there are speaker bureaus out there or training bureaus that specifically cater to countries like India and Zimbabwe and stuff like that. I guess
Mm,
Zimbabwe is not a country, Africa and places like that,
mm.
Brazil, South American countries that will take people out to do stuff like that. So get on that circuit.
I have to
And
get on that circuit. Sounds like a good plan.
well, and I must say that Dino is sufficient is totally not sufficient. Dino is deficient of the sports gene in general in American sports, let alone any other sports around the country. So yeah, that's probably a good reason why we did not get involved in that conversation.
Funny.
But no, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today. It was really, really well. I just really enjoyed this conversation a lot, and I love it as a host to be able to really pick the brain of people who I love what they're doing. I mentioned at the top of the show, leadership is very important to me. It's the foundation of my business and what I try to help people do as well. And to know that they have a place to go to for coaching, and I love your tagline of trusted advice, to know they have a place to go to be vulnerable, to get rid of that loneliness, have at least one person that they can talk up to about pretty much anything and know it's in a safe environment. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
My absolute pleasure. It was really fun. Thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, that comes to the conclusion of our episode here. And please reach out to Jonathan on LinkedIn. As he said, he's very active there. I believe that's where we met Jonathan, and ask him questions, find out more if maybe connecting with him is the right thing for you or one of your leaders in your business, especially as you're growing. You've heard in just 45 minutes the breadth of knowledge that he has on business ownership, everything from that leadership piece to employment to really even exiting a business that maybe you're ready to let go of. So please reach out to him. And again, thank you all for being part of our audience here at the Own Your Role podcast. We'll see you on the next episode, everybody.